What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton, and this is my teammates with me, Mr. Trevor Everett, head coach Scott Parra, and Michael DeRosa. We are here on this fine Sunday afternoon to bring you another edition of weekly college basketball news. It was another big weekend in our sport. I'm losing my voice. Full disclosure, I was at the Royal Rumble last night. 70,000 of my closest friends packed in Lucas Oil Stadium, an experience I'll never forget for a lot of different reasons. But we're here to talk college basketball day. It is a big show. We do have a special guest that will be joining us here in about 15 minutes. Somebody you guys know very well. Indiana fans may want to turn your eyes because I know you wanted this man badly as your head coach, especially after the season. Probably really upset. But gentlemen, how are we doing on the Sunday as I try to regain my voice?
Doing great. What a day yesterday. I mean, obviously I'm excited to talk to Dusty here in a little bit and to dive into some of these games. And we were talking kind of before we came on, just the amazing amount of conference teams that lost at home, including great, supposedly some of the best teams in the country this year, losing at home in conference play, which just shows you how good these teams are, how many good teams there are, I should say, and what this year's been like. Just been awesome.
Good, Mike. Good.
Yeah, I just want to point out that Josh said he had 70,000 friends. I'm taking under on that one. No, it was.
Hey, man, I knew them all. Like, if you've ever been to a wrestling show, like there was this Mexican family next to me that were awesome. And we were all cheering, like people behind us, like these people talking to my nephew when he was cheering for Jey Uso. They were like hyping him up. When you go to a wrestling show, man, I'm telling you, it's like everybody's a family.
That's happy for him. And then, I mean, it was a great day of hoops yesterday. Great day. I woke up early to watch some of the fights and then went into the hoops. So I was just sitting on my couch for like 14 hours. It was kind of cool. And we get this NBA news, and it's like I'm locked into St. Mary's Gonzaga, and
that was where I was going. So yeah, let's do this now. Let's just address the elephant in the room, guys. Like in a matter of 24 hours, trying to keep up with college basketball. The one night, by the way, I'm just going to own up to this. I said this to Coach before we started. The one night that I decided to get some sleep and go to bed during St. Mary's Gonzaga because St. Mary's was up. They were dominating the first half. I was like, okay, this is fine. I can catch up in the morning. And then 15 minutes left in the game, the commentator's like, well, we have some interesting news coming across the desk that we'd like to announce that Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis have been traded for each other. And I'm like, the one night that I go to bed, and then just on top of all of it, trying to put in an offer on the house just personally. So it's just been a whirlwind of a 24 hours. I've caught up. I'm ready to talk about it. And it's going to be great.
They announced the trade, and Sean Farnham was like, what?
Yeah, literally. His reaction was amazing. His reaction was like, I found out in the weirdest way possible. My wife rolled over. I was still asleep. She goes, hey, you're going to want to see this. Taps me, holds up the phone. And when I noticed it was an ESPN notification, I immediately was like, well, it's not a photo, so it's hard to fake an ESPN notification. And so all of this stuff started, and I was like, you know what? So I love you guys, but the moment I'm done with this, that's what I'm doing the rest of the day is dealing with that news and figuring that out. So,
yeah. I noticed you wore your Lakers hat today. I think that's apropos.
Luka could literally be smoking and drinking, walking down the court with the ball, and I could care less with giving him the extension. Anyway,
that's awesome. I think it's a good deal for both because Dallas needed a little rim protection. They're getting it with Anthony Davis. Obviously, the Lakers needed something, a change of pace. They're going to get a dominant scoring ball guard. Hey, there's your NBA news, gentlemen. There's your NBA news. We had to. I think it is fair. I think we have to talk about that for a minute.
It's wild. All three people on SportsCenter this morning called it the biggest trade in NBA history, and they're probably
right. It came out. You know what? It came out of nowhere. No rumors, no leaks, no. It's almost like you're playing 2K25, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to trade for it. We're not going to talk about it. I'm just going to trade for it. We do have Peyton in the comments. I wonder where our guy Connor is. He's normally the first in line here. I wonder if Peyton says that sounds great and all talking NBA, but I'm just curious how Josh would think. Well, you know what? Before Dusty comes on, let's talk about it. Like, I'm sure we can break it down after more in depth, but full disclosure, because I had to throw a number, I didn't get a watch. And I think maybe that's the best thing for me, ironically, with such an important game. I didn't get a watch. So I couldn't be furious because I was stuck in a parking garage for an hour and 20 minutes praying I could get home with my phone dead. So, I don't know. Let me put it this way. I had a lot of thoughts driving home last night when I did find out the news that are maybe subsided a little bit, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts before I say anything else.
Well,
go ahead, Coach.
I text you guys, leading up to it, the emotion he was going to feel. I mean, it was going to be a very, very, difficult emotional night for him and his family. I'm sure it's just impossible for it not to be. I thought, they listened to the announcers before the game, and I ended up watching almost the whole game. I watched a lot of the game, and that he came out with 4 minutes on the clock when he said he probably wouldn't do that. He was shaking hands and kissing babies. And then his team got off to a good start. I mean, they hit some shots early. They couldn't stop Kentucky. They were 6 for their first 6. But then Kentucky could not stop them at the end of the day, the whole night. They close it and they'd score. They'd close it, they'd turn it over for a breakaway dunk. They'd close it and so Arkansas just kept relentlessly attacking, scoring. They shot the ball better, right, than they have all year. And to Cal's credit, those kids rose to the occasion and in a wild atmosphere.
What Michael, I feel like, sorry, Trevor, real quick. I feel like Michael and I on Thursday's show, episode 213, we're almost like Nostradamus, because Indiana Purdue, I'm sure we're talking about, like Indiana's game plan we laid out. They played it to a T, except for the kind of the end there, and kept themselves in the game. We talk about a lot of these scenarios, and one of them we said, Michael, is Cal is good for one of these a year. Like I gave the example last year with Kentucky, they go to Auburn, had no business winning that game. They win the game. He's good on for one a year where backs against the wall, team's not playing good, they're big underdogs, and his team comes out firing. And the one stat I will say before I let you go, Trevor, Arkansas cannot shoot. They will not shoot like this again. But something about coming into Rupp Arena, they hit 13 of 25 threes. That is the biggest story of that game from what I could tell stat-wise. They made shots. And they were amped up from what I heard. And, yeah, Cal's good for them one a year. They may not win another game the rest of the year, but they got the one that mattered the most to them and to this fan base. Do not let Big Blue Nation try to downplay this. It mattered a whole hell of a lot to us because now we could go on NCAA tournament, have a great run. If we don't get Arkansas back this year in the NCAA or Nashville, they're going to hold it over ahead for 365, similar to what Louisville would do if they beat us. So, yeah, disgusting.
What I found so fascinating too is just from I'll be honest, I watched the whole game, but the game itself wasn't. I mean, I kind of just was. I had other games on, the famous YouTube TV multi-box, and so I was looking at other games. I was like, this is it just kind of was on, and I was like, okay, I was actually more intrigued by other things. But I will just say, from all the crap that Calipari got in the last 3 to 5 years, and how things have just kind of transpired. I think he handled it. I think he handled it as best he could have. I think Coach was kind of talked about that leading into it. That I just was really keened in on. Of course, all the coverage and attention is going to be what it is. And at one point, I texted you guys they hadn't shown. I had flipped around. I had gotten home from something. They did not show someone other than him on either bench for what felt like 10 game minutes. It was one of those situations where I was kind of like I get it, but you're still trying to tell the story of a game. And if the story of the game is him, then that's fine. But I just felt like it could have been handled from a media standpoint a little bit better. But from a context of the basketball part of it, what was really fascinating to me is that, I said to my wife, because UNC Duke we'll get to in a little bit, rivalries in college basketball still exist. But I think as the transfer portal and just the lack of continuity with programs starts to change, I think, honestly, having his 3 best players and scorers in this game coming from his old team and being, all right, well, Kentucky didn't want me, Mark Pope didn't want me, whatever, that stuff happens, transfer portal, whatever. They were probably going to follow Cal regardless. What I thought was so fascinating was those guys were into it, right? It got a little chippy. It got a little whatever. And I'm not necessarily saying it's an Arkansas-Kentucky thing because it's not. It's those 3 guys played for Cal and they wanted to win that game for him. And it was really fascinating to see, even as college basketball changes in the landscape of the transfer portal, that guys still care and guys still are passionate and guys still want those games to matter. And so those 3 guys, again, I think it's fitting and telling of the story of the game that the 3 highest scorers at one point, I think it finished that way. They showed a graphic with 3 minutes left, that the 3 highest scorers were 3 guys that played for Cal last year.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. You can tell that those 3 badly wanted, more than anybody in Kentucky besides Amari Williams wanted it. They wanted it bad. You could tell too. DJ Wagner, we've talked for the last year about him, where good player, really solid, getting down the rim or getting downhill to the rim, good defender, but he can't shoot. And he comes in this game and makes huge threes in the second half. He ends up with 2 threes, both of them step back with a hand in his face. It's like when guys are making plays that don't normally make plays, like, what are you going to do? Their energy level was better than Kentucky. They clearly wanted it, and it got chippy. Like, even you talked about the 3 who did play. How about the 3 that were committed, that thought their future was going to lie in Lexington? Billy Richmond, Carter Knox made some plays. Obviously, Boogie Flan hurt, so he did not play. But those guys all had a stake in this, and their coach being booed. They just wanted it more, man. And I think that's the part that's unacceptable from Kentucky fans, or not fans, Kentucky players. They knew that building was as electric as any you'll ever find in college basketball. Yep. It was vitriolic. Like, I seen videos where an hour and a half or whatever, 90 minutes before the game, where players come out and shoot around, DJ Wagner, Tyler Eulis, who's beloved at Kentucky, was getting booed because he had Arkansas shirt on. It was vitriolic. Those players on Kentucky needed to know the assignment, as Pope said in his introductory press conference, and they absolutely did not. You cannot lose that game. If you told Kentucky fans, which I'm one, that we go 1-1 this week, which one would you rather have? The win at Tennessee was great from an analytical standpoint, and it's a rival and shorthanded and all that, but you can't lose last night. We would have gave up a Tennessee loss for a win last night. And because also, this is the first one, gentlemen, that actually hurts them. All their other losses have been Q1s. This was a quad 2 on your home floor to your ex-coach, to a bunch of your former players, a bunch of your former recruits, and you lose in front of an all-time atmosphere. It's embarrassing.
I would rather beat a top 5 team. It just is what it is, or 7, I think, whatever they were at the time. I don't know. That just speaks better to the fact that Arkansas is more than likely not an NCAA tournament team. You guys are, and that win against Tennessee means more in the grand scheme of, can you win?
Once the dust settles,
I get it, but like, I hear it from like the fan perspective, but I'm not going to hear it from the, hey, like, oh yeah, this win means more of that. Like, you beat a top 10 team that's ultimately going to end up being a top 2 seed in the tournament in Tennessee. And like, that win is something that will help your NCAA tournament resume and could potentially help you win a national championship. So,
what is Butler's status?
Yeah, so Coach Pope
he's out.
This is Peyton's comment. I was just going to address this, but Coach Pope said in the postgame basically, like, we're not going to know for weeks. Like, we don't know what's going on. So
what's the injury?
It's a shoulder.
Yeah, shoulder.
Because where he'd been beat the hell out of, or like, he was beat up through the season, and then that Texas A&M game took a lot out of him, where he got hit in the face, his shoulder got hit multiple times. And that's something else, DeRosa, is like how banged up they are. And I'm not using it as an excuse, but you look at this team, not great defensively. They're actually really bad. As good as they can be offensively, they're really bad defensively. But they're also here's where Pope gets himself in trouble, is playing too many guys. Like, I heard that we were up 18-12. Jackson Robinson just hit a 3. The building had come unglued because Cal forced to call timeout. Then he subs like 3 dudes out. Like, his rotations have got to like shorten, especially when you're playing injury prone. You're down 2 point guards that can absolutely help this team. And unfortunately, I don't know if we'll see the quote unquote real Kentucky until those guys are back, if they are back. So until then, I think we're going to ride the wave of, if you play a team that you should lose to, like a Tennessee or an Alabama, they're going to knock those teams off. But when they come in as a heavy favorite, they're more than likely going to lose. It's the weirdest dynamic.
Yeah, and I thought in this game, one thing, Arkansas did really well. You mentioned it on the last show. It was Big Z. They would run Big Z in like these pick and pop actions. He hit 4 threes, or they ran like this circle, and then they ran some like floppy stuff for him. And Mario Williams or whoever was guarding him just wasn't ready for it. And we also mentioned on the last show, you're going to need a good game out of John L. Davis. We didn't feel like he had one. He was really, really good in this game. 18 points, 6 assists, 5 boards. He was really, really solid. And that was another guy that Arkansas hasn't gotten going. They got him going in this spot. He was ready for that moment. And Arkansas just could not be stopped. They were excellent. And gets you a win.
Well, moving on from Arkansas's big win and Cal's revenge game, we're happy to bring on with us today for the first time ever, the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, Dusty May. Coach, it is an honor to have you on. I know Coach Para kind of set this up for us, so we clearly appreciate him. But, Coach, how are you doing this Sunday? And welcome aboard in your first time on the show.
I'm doing great. And you guys say that like I've been invited on the show before. This is my first invite, so it's an honor to be on.
I had a time and I hit it right. So we know how busy this time of the year is, man. Great to see you, by the way, Dusty.
Thanks, Coach. Great to see you as well.
As always. And we've been doing this now all year, Thursdays and Sundays. And yesterday, like first thing I have for you before I get into a coach's thing, because that's kind of my perspective on all this and with these guys being the fans, and is yesterday. Like, do you get to see how much did you get to pay attention to what was all happening yesterday in college basketball?
Well, a little bit. As I was getting ready to leave for our game, I had the Florida-Tennessee game on. Obviously, I have a lot of ties to that program, and after working there and whatnot. So I watched that closely. And then when I was kind of flipping through some AAC games as we were on the bus back going to the airplane after the game. And then last night I got home and I was cheering like crazy for John L. Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Just, he was such a important member of us taking the next step at FAU. And obviously this year hasn't gone how he anticipated, but it's February. The two most important months are in front of him, and just excited to see him competing like he's capable of. And just they look like a connected group. So I've been rooting for all of our former guys profusely this year. And so it was nice to see John L. do well.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because people wonder, he's playing a game. He has a huge road win, and yet, we're always kind of peeking scores, seeing what we can watch. And I used to do the same thing, even if it was you guys in the same league because of our relationship. So before I let these guys ask a couple, I got a coach's question for you. To get two close wins, right? One at home, one on the road. And we know how hard it is. We know how thin the margin, how great your league is. But let's just go to one specific situation, like the end of the Penn State game at home. Like walk us through a little bit from your perspective, that 9-0 run to close out and make a huge win in a game that kind of almost slipped away there, right? Just bring the audience through that.
Yeah, and Scott, as you know, so many of these games come down to matchups and what the other team does well. What are their strengths? And if their strengths are your weaknesses, you might lose to a lesser team, or you might be able to pull off an upset against a more talented team, just simply because of what teams do well. That was an odd game where in the second half, I felt like we had a chance to really separate, and we missed some shots. We missed some layups. There was a 2-on-1 break that turned into a three-pointer the other way. And so Penn State hung around, and then they made a couple of huge threes. And at that point, it felt like, man, this might just be one of those nights. It's not meant to be. That's what you're thinking internally. We're getting great looks. They're making shots. And to our guys' credit, they stayed poised. And once, Trey Donaldson had been in that situation 4 or 5 times this year, and he just looked more confident than he had in the other games. And man, he made a couple of huge plays. And, like I said, it was just a situation where, and we got a good break where Danny Wolf got a piece of the ball and got a piece of Kern's arm as well. And that's a call that's went against us all year.
Oh, wow.
And for that night, that call didn't go against us that particular night. And it's just kind of how it all comes around. But,
was that the shot you wanted? Were you comfortable with that shot he took?
Are you talking about Trey Donaldson's 3-pointer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's worked on that shot a lot. We didn't feel like coming into the year we had great playmaking. So we spend about 3 minutes a day, between 1.5 and 3 minutes a day, working on, we call them late shot clock shots, which are your individual shots where you make a move, get your guy out of his box, and try to get him to develop a go-to move each way in case it's a late shot clock or late into the half or whatever case. Wow. And that's the one he's spent a lot of time working on. We've seen him knock it down in practice. He actually executed it much better in the game than he does in practice. He drove the defender back, came back and sat down into it. So it was a great individual play. And, there have been several games this year we felt like we deserved to win. And we snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory. And then that one I felt like we came out on the other side. It's strange how the season goes. You feel like you should have won a couple and you lose them. And then you feel like you probably maybe didn't deserve to win a few and you win them. And that's usually how it is. You just hope it balances out to 50-50 instead of the years where, you win 1 out of 10 of them or vice versa.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, Coach, thanks for joining us, by the way. Just wanted to ask about your team as a whole on the season. I mean, just to set the stage for the listeners, you're 8-2. You're competing at the top of the league for a title in your first year at Michigan. Was there a moment, whether it's in a practice before the season or in a game this season, where you looked at your group, just saw them, and you thought, yes, this is a team that can compete and maybe even win a Big Ten title?
Yeah, this summer there were a couple of days when I would walk over to an assistant coach during practice and I would say, we got a chance to be pretty good, don't we? And Mike Boynton's very optimistic on our staff. The guys at FAU, they know me really, really well. And I'm not, I try to keep a real clear assessment of where we are. Now I hadn't been in the Big Ten in a while. So I didn't realize how physical it still was. You hear these, but you didn't realize that if you're going to check into the game, you're going to get a forearm shiver just to check into the game. So, I wish we would have worked a little bit differently in the summer, but that's we don't have all the answers. We're searching for them, and so, but yeah, there were several days. But you know what? We had the same issues then that we have now. We turned the ball over all summer. We shot the heck out of it. We offensive rebounded it really well. Thought because of our size, we were solid defensively and had a big upside, but we turned it over so much. And that's the one thing that's had a negative impact on all the other areas because we give up pick sixes, which kills our defensive numbers. It stops runs. It doesn't give us a shot, and we shoot it really well. And therefore, we don't have a chance to offensive rebound it when we do miss. So we had those issues all summer. We haven't been able to consistently correct them, except against Penn State. Unfortunately, in that one game, we were able to keep it manageable.
Coach Trevor Ever here. Thanks for joining us. Talk me through a little bit, actually. I think the end of your answer here will I think this question is a good segue. So Michael mentioned where you guys are, your thought process, how well you've done exceptionally in the first year. But look, this, you've been coaching a long time. The first year with the program is really difficult. And so I guess part of that, you kind of talked towards the end there about some of the struggles, talk about the progression of this team. And obviously, you coming into it, okay, we have some talent. We brought a lot of great players in. But talk about the process of maybe some of the challenges for a first-year coach. Even though you are successful, talk about how that process has been and how you've had to work through that. Something we may not know.
Well, the biggest issue is not knowing your players. Most of them, you don't go into their living anymore. You don't know their families. You don't know what their values are. You don't know what really drives them like you do if you've spent 3 or 4 years with players, or you recruited them as a junior and a senior, and then you have them as a sophomore. You know them much better, and even I'm a coach that I really respect the I guess the individual skills of each player. It's like Coach Parra's teams at Rice. Fiedler would have been put in a box other places and not been able to play with the creativity that he played with, and there's several instances like that, even with the way Evie played. I mean, being able to sit down into those deeper shots, and so I've always tried to just really watch and learn our guys before we, I guess, identified roles or put them in this position or that position, because sometimes you may have a guy that does something really, really unique that you didn't even know about. So, and even Coach Bolster with the Heat, I've spent a lot of time down there and gotten to know their staff well. And typically in a normal year, he doesn't assign roles until the playoffs start. So they play 82 games, and maybe a week before the playoffs is when they assign roles, because they have guys in and out of the lineup. He wants to see how they grow and develop and whatnot. And then once it comes time where it's winning is your basketball life or death, then it's time to assign roles. So I think now we're at the point of the season, it's February, where I probably have to do a better job of being a little bit more direct in what the roles are going to be. And hopefully we find a little more synergy where your playmakers aren't as anxious to play make because they're getting the ball more and the flow of the game's much greater for us.
Coach, I've got a couple before we let you go. We appreciate your time. I want to take a step back. Let's go back to your FAU Final Four run. And I want to ask about that first round game with Memphis. Close, came down to the end. Some say controversial, but you get the win, and that sparks your historic run to the Final Four. After that game is over, when you and the players and your coaching staff are kind of gathered together, regrouping yourself, do you look back on that and be like, "Whew, we got that one out of the way. Now we can maybe play free"? Or how was that after coming? Because you guys came really close. If you don't beat Memphis, who knows what happens? But you beat Memphis and you go on this historic run. Kind of take us through that Memphis win and what sparked a historic Final Four run.
Well, Twitter's made out this controversy that there's a loose ball, there's a timeout. When we didn't score on that possession, they got the ball back again after that. So there's this folklore of this
Twitter
pivotal non-call. Twitter gets that, and so yes, there was a scrum, and an official could have called a timeout, even though it's really difficult to call a timeout in that situation. But there was a player standing on the court signaling timeout, so that's the reason we won in an 85 possession game. But nonetheless,
Right.
And then that next possession, we didn't score. They get the ball back, and then they turn it over, and which allowed us to get the ball back for the final possession. So that's left in the Twitterverse. But no, to be honest, I grew up in Indiana and played at a really good 1A. It's 1A. It's 2A now, but back then it was the smallest classification. I think there's 90
I'm from
students
Indiana.
in
Where'd
my
you
class.
go? I'm from
Eastern
Indiana.
Green.
So I went to Edinburgh, a 1A as well.
Okay. Yeah, of course. So
Yep.
we played in the Bedford North Lawrence sectional, which was Bloomington North, Bloomington South, Bedford North Lawrence, Edgewood, all in Brown County, all 4A schools except Brown County was 3A. And so us winning the sectional was like a state championship. So when we went to the tournament at FAU, we felt like we had already been to the Final Four, to be honest. Like at that point, we said, wow, we won Conference USA regular season. We won the tournament. Just getting to the tournament, our campus was, we hit the pinnacle. And it felt like we'd won a sectional championship back in 1A or back in class basketball. But nonetheless, and at that time is the first year of the portal. So I'm actually spending Monday organizing a golf outing in case we weren't able to win on Thursday. Monday morning, I'm calling some guys around town and said, hey, if we had a golf outing next year, would you buy a foursome? Would you mind sponsoring a hole? And one of my friends, Larry Schneider, said, what are you doing right now? And I said, Larry, if we don't have a plan, if we lose on Thursday and we don't have a plan on Friday, then we're rebuilding again next year. I at least need to have a plan of how we're going to attack this. He said, look, I'll get you a golf outing. Tell me what you need. Let me and a couple friends work on this. You worry about preparing for Memphis. And I said, okay. Just to show you where we are in the scope of things. And then once we beat Memphis, Kyle Church on my staff said, do you realize we're going to be a double-digit favorite to go to the Sweet 16 at FAU? I said, come on. He said, we're going to be double-digit favorites to go to the Sweet 16. So at that point, then the Sweet 16 was like our national championship. And then we win that one. And then the next two games is when I really learned about the psychology of it. Well, even prior to that, but when it really jumped out at me that when we played Tennessee and Kansas State, both of those teams, in my opinion, played much tighter than we did. We played loose, free, nothing to lose. And rewind back to Fairleigh Dickinson, we played tight. We played like the high major against the mid major. They played loose, free, nothing to lose. And so I think that, looking back, that's part of why the NCAA tournament is what it is. When you have guys that expect to win and they're thinking big picture, whatnot, versus some guys that, man, they're out there just hooping and letting it go. It's a completely different mindset, and I think that once we got past the Fairleigh Dickinson game, we just kind of had that energy and that swag and a nothing to lose mindset where we played free, we played with confidence, and man, our guys just, especially our reserves, like our star players get so much credit, but man, our really 4 through 9 carried us in a majority of those games.
I'm glad you brought up. Obviously, most people who watch this know you're from Indiana, and we have a huge Indiana following because I'm from Indiana, and we've kind of cultivated this. Believe me, they love you, and that's all I'll say. Indiana fans love you. And, 1A school, so I like the connection there as well. But I'll wrap up my final question, kind of two here. One being Trey Donaldson. You mentioned him. We've covered Trey for a long time now when he was at Auburn playing for Bruce Pearl. And the kind of scouting report on him was always – really tough defender, let him shoot, right? Like he could make an open shot here and there, get downhill. But you mentioned it just a little bit ago, making that clutch shot. You guys work on kind of end of game scenarios. He has been phenomenal for you this year. How have you seen him grow since he came to play for Michigan? And I'll let you answer that, and then I'll finish my second part of this question.
I've seen more growth with outside of basketball than I have anything else. His leadership, his maturity, he seems to be much better every week. And we're still figuring out better ways to use him. He's really, really special in the pick and roll as far as finding shooters and finding our big dive into the rim. So we're using him. We're starting to use him in even different ways where we start him off the ball and get it back in his hands. So everyone's involved, but then it gets to the playmaker's hands. And so, but his defensive ability, the way he pushes tempo. But to be honest, the first thing that jumped out when we were evaluating him offensively was how well the ball came out of his hands, especially in transition. He pitches ahead to the rim runners. He advances it to the two side. He throws it cross court. He slices the floor. He just has a real good feel for getting the ball out of his hands at the right time, and he makes everyone around him better. We try to keep everybody involved, everyone in flow. If he would probably be a little bit more productive if the ball was in his hands at all times. But the flip side of it is then he'd probably be a little more predictable to scout and whatnot. But he's been a godsend. He's been so good for us, and we're going to go as far as Trey Donaldson takes us.
And then the last part of this, your next five. I know as coaches, the next game up, you're only looking ahead to Oregon on Wednesday. I get that. But your next five, Michael talked about, you guys are right in the thick of it for a Big Ten title regular season. The next five, you're playing five teams that have all been ranked in our ECB top 25 and the AP top 25 at some point throughout the year. And they're all top 60 in KenPom. You get Oregon at home, Indiana away, Purdue home, Ohio State away, and Michigan State home. Realistically, in order, let's say, to try to win the Big Ten, are you trying to, let's take care of the 3 home games, maybe steal one on the road? Kind of your mindset, because this is a brutal 5-game stretch coming up.
He's trying to enjoy his Sunday, Josh.
Hey, I've got to ask the questions.
I'll enjoy Sunday. I'll enjoy Sundays when I'm dead. This Sunday. No, today's a big day because this time of year, practice time is invaluable. You don't have much of it. Your guys are going on fumes. They're banged up. They're beat up. And so we have to figure out a way to actually just bumped in a couple of staffers and say, give me one thing each that we can improve this week, because we're not out here playing whack-a-mole. But what was the question? But I'm sorry, what was the question? I went off on another tangent.
No, you're good. It just the 5-game stretch upcoming against every team in that is inside the top 60 in KenPom. They've been ranked either currently or throughout the year. Just it's a really tough 5-game stretch. I just kind of your thoughts on how you
all focus is on Oregon. Obviously, you have to take care of home, but you can't take care of game 2 and 3 unless you get the first one. So typically, I don't know who we play after the next game and the game after that. Maybe 2 games in advance just because you're planning travel and practice. But no, it's all about Oregon. And to be honest, I think Michigan State's in first right now with 1 loss. They could lose 5 in a row, and Maryland, who's lost 4 or 5 games, could win 10. I mean, it could win their last 7 games, whatever the case. That's just the way the league is. So there's not really any point in trying to look too far down the line. And when you factor in how big these leagues are, it's kind of like back in the day when we played these conferences at 8 teams. Now we're playing in leagues that there's 18 teams or whatever the case. So it's almost like winning 2 or 3 leagues each year merged into one. So no, we're trying to focus on playing good basketball and making sure our guys are as connected as they were the first couple months, because they spent a lot of time with each other. The older guys, it's February, starting to think about what their future and careers are going to look like. The younger guys who aren't playing are probably thinking, man, I wonder if I can get paid in the portal or what's going to happen. So it's keeping guys focused on this team right here, right now, and we can all worry about all that other stuff later.
Yeah, I know Mike, you got one question. I just thought the Sunday comment was really telling, because we talked about it recently. It's not a question, just more of a comment about how the Big Ten is one of the only leagues that plays 7 days a week. And so, like you mentioned, Sundays you're sleeping your dead. Like the Big Ten forces you. You have to play. I mean, you came from the FAU where the American plays games on Sunday. They have the marquee there. But it's just so fascinating. Like, people think you play a game on Saturday, you take a break on Sunday. A lot of coaches do that, and then you do Monday, right? Or you prep for the game, give the guys a day off, right? But it's just really fascinating to hear that 7-day-a-week turn like that. It is what it is.
Yeah, we typically play we play Friday night or Sundays. Typically, those are prime television slots for the Big Ten Conference. So we're either practicing on a Sunday typically, or we're playing a game on a Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah. Real quick, Coach, whenever I watch your team play, I'm just in awe of Danny Wolf, the size and the skill level that he has. Just 2 kind of quick questions here. 1, is he like any guy you've coached before? And 2, was this the guy you imagined getting this season when you were recruiting him out of the portal? Has he even exceeded your expectations?
No, and I don't know. I thought it was really good. You never know how any of these guys are going to adapt the level up to the physicality. But getting to know Danny, basketball is very important to him. He's driven. He's extremely focused on working on his craft. And so nothing surprises me when you take someone who's 7 feet, they can dribble, pass, and shoot, and they love ball, and they enjoy the work. So you can't be surprised when they're having the success that he's having. But did I foresee this when we were watching him on Synergy? No, you can't. You can't imagine that. You're recruiting all these guys hoping they can have an impact, but you never really know. But after getting to know him and being around him and being part of his journey, none of his success doesn't surprise me because he works and he puts a lot of time into his craft.
I told Dusty this the other night when we were on the phone. I recruited him really hard. We saw him kind of being Max, like after Max, at the way we played, and only he could shoot. And so we thought of him being even a next level type of guy with Max. And so, yeah, we love him. Then he went to Yale, and now obviously he's with Dusty, and there's 2 7-footers playing pick and roll. It's fun to watch.
It's insane.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, in case Max is listening, Danny's much quicker laterally.
Well, okay. And by the way, that doesn't take much now, so it's not like you're making a big statement. But hey, how about Max in the G League with Frisco and Dallas, and he and Quincy played against each other the other night out in LA. Just crazy, just like you and your guys, right? The kid Camp Wagner had a 22 for Indiana State last night, Dusty. Makai's on Washington. Keanu's playing well for Utah. I do the same as you.
Makai played well yesterday. When they've won, Makai's played well. He's his shooting has been pivotal. But back on that note, right after you guys committed Max, I was early in my FAU tenure, and I saw him after you guys had already committed him, and I was like, man, we probably missed on one here. But to see his development after 2 years is like, we definitely missed on one because he was a surge. He was fun to watch. I mean, a guy like that you could run your offense through, and he made passes that 2 or 3 times a game you'd have to rewind it and say, what WTF just happened there? Did he really just do that?
I rewatched our East Carolina game from last year. His stat line, I think he had 2, 9, and 8. I mean, he had 9. He had 9 assists. He wasn't feeling, but he had 9 assists. And some of the passes, he was something else. He was fun. Hey, by the way, Dusty, I tweeted about the other day when in one of my early days at Rice, we scored 89 against Houston. It was like one of my proudest moments as a coach in a loss, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Mike, I mean, it's like root canal against those guys. But one of the other fun games I had in a loss was against you guys the year you went to the Final Four at your place. It was like 96-88, right? Or something crazy. Both teams, nobody could stop anybody. And
nope, it was a shootout.
Yeah, it was. It was a really. Obviously, you lose. You don't remember very many of them fondly, but I remember that was a fun game.
That one and La Tech at home that year were 2 games that were completely different, but both of those games we felt prepared us because we were pushed to the absolute limit, and those nights we had to keep score.
Yeah, well, you gave us overtime here, brother. I appreciate you.
No, good to see you guys anytime.
Yeah, and good luck Wednesday. Okay, keep it rolling. I'll be in touch.
Perfect. We'll talk to you soon, Coach. See you guys.
Right,
thanks.
I appreciate you, Coach. That was head coach Dusty May of Michigan. Like Coach Para said, gave us overtime, but very entertaining. Like we've talked about it. I love the guests that come on, especially coaches that are engaged and give us more instead of just the coach speak. Like,
how good was that end of game stuff? How good was that end of game stuff?
No, look, and he deserves a lot of credit, and I'm dead serious. And like we were harsh on like a guy like Trey Donaldson and like KD Johnson from Auburn last year because the talent was there and they were so inconsistent. And to see what Dusty's been able to get out of Trey has been a huge reason. As much as Danny Wolf, as much as Vlad Golden and some of these others, getting Trey Donaldson locked in on both ends of the floor has developed them because he's so physically strong. And turning him into where you can make like an open shot or a contested shot sometimes now has changed the ceiling for them.
I wish I had said it to him. I said to you guys, what Coach probably remembers, he's laughing. 2 weeks ago, I said, I'm like, I love Dusty because every time I watch him, they're down 30 or up 30. And it's the same man every time. And it was just so funny to hear like how he actually was still able to talk through the raw emotion of some of those moments. And I was like, but you would never have known.
And he's one of those guys, Trevor, like this is just who he is. Like he calls me to check on me. like, that's like a true friend,
Yeah.
because when you go through what I went through, it's not fun. And you kind of feel like you're ostracized a little bit. And so you really kind of see people because he's in the middle of the grind, right? All your mind as a head coach, all you're thinking about is your players, your staff, your next game, and recruiting. And, but he's, for him to take the time, and we talk all the time, but for him to call me out of the blue just to check on me tells you what kind of guy he is. And so easy to root for. And look, we've been friends for 20 plus years, going back to our days in Los Angeles when we were young and dumb and learning this, trying to figure this game out some. And so it's just been a great friendship, and to watch his rise in this game has been awesome.
Go ahead,
real quick.
Michael.
Yeah, I just think one thing that's really interesting is hearing coach talk with another coach, just seeing like the mindset of coaches. That's not something you're really getting in most spots. Just seeing the two guys talk about stories, either about we were watching this kid when we were recruiting him, and it's like, shit, we got to go against him for 4 years.
We got a fielder ECU stat line pull. Like, where does that come? Like, that doesn't come anywhere else. Like, it's just insanity.
Well, he recruited him. I mean, that was right in his yard. I mean, Max was in his backyard.
It's like we're a fly on a wall listening to conversations that we shouldn't. That's why I'm so thankful for this platform and Coach, what he's brought for us this year. The Indiana people, and I joked with him, and he kind of blushed and smiled about it. The Indiana people, once they see this, if they're not watching live, when they go back and watch on a replay, they are going to love this, by the way. They love him so much. Talk about John L. Davis. I almost turned my camera off, guys. I mean, he's over here praising John L., and John L. drops 18. The last thing, we got to move on, but I did have a question about the one last thing on Kentucky, Arkansas. Where does this take both teams? This is a huge win for Arkansas. No doubt about it. This is a bad loss for Kentucky in the terms of what goes into it, right? When you look forward, Kentucky goes on the road Tuesday at Ole Miss. It doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier for Arkansas. They go on the road to Texas on Wednesday, I think it is. So when you're looking out, can this turn Arkansas season around, or was this a one-off? Does Kentucky, who's lost 3 of their last 4 now, are they in like a deep slide, or is this just kind of overblown?
Well, I'm going to say –
Go ahead, Michael. You take it.
I'm going to say I feel like this is kind of a one-off for Arkansas. It's the moment. Those guys are able to get up to the moment. And actually, just one note I wanted to make. I don't know if you guys were watching, but like in the post game, they did an interview with Cal, and his guys are running behind him celebrating. And Billy Richmond said something, and he goes, "Hey, Billy, stop it!"
It was
in the middle of his interview.
No context. CBB had it up before anybody could blink. Yeah. It was the funniest thing.
Hilarious that. But
he look, Cal did a great job of being respectful, and like every interview he had was how much he loved that place, and he expected like the booze, whatever. And even Arkansas, they did a great job trolling, by the way. Like if you look at Arkansas's Twitter, they trolled the shit last night, and they should have. They revealed like this little, was a 40-second teaser of a video that they put on like Hog website or something, and it was Cal talking to his guys after locker room, and he was proud of them. This is for DJ Z and Adu. But he also said, give them credit. They played hard. We just made shots. So honestly, Cal handled this really, really well, this whole thing. But I don't think he could have handled it better despite the circumstances.
Yeah, but to answer your original question, I still kind of think this feels more like a one-off than anything. It's easy to get it for the moment. If they can get this version of John L. Davis all year, maybe they can really build something. But just to me, it just kind of felt like a one-off game where they really showed it for the moment. And then on the Kentucky side, it scares me with their defense. And that's a team that, look, if your opponent's hitting early shots, we could deal with another Oakland.
I kind of alluded to it earlier, and I'm glad you asked it. But, like, this doesn't – I mean, I still think Kentucky can win a national championship. Like, is that a far-fetched? I think I know the defense and numbers lie, and numbers might lie. But at the end of the day, this win means nothing to me beyond the fact that Arkansas beat Kentucky in a big moment because of their former coach. Like Arkansas, they're still not good. Like that just doesn't change because of one game. It can, obviously it can change the whole shape of the season. I get that. Right. But I mean, Kentucky beat Tennessee like 4 days ago. Like, I don't know, like it's a bad loss. It is. But like I mentioned earlier, like it's the whole, like you said it. I mean, it's the whole, like, I'd rather win this game versus like, I'm far-fetched to think a team would rather win this game versus lose that game when, in the grand scheme of things, you learn more about your team and you understand you're a better team by beating Tennessee. So ultimately, it doesn't change it.
Coach, have you coached like a Jekyll and Hyde team like that, where against the good teams, your guys show up? Like, you can guarantee if you're going against a team that you're not expected to win, or they're highly thought of, or however you want to look at that you're like, all right, my guys are going to show up. But then you play a team that you're expected to beat the brakes off of, and you're like, I don't know. It's like so Jekyll and Hyde with this team.
Well, one of the best players I ever coached was like that as a player, Derek Glasser, who's currently assistant coach at UC Santa Barbara and was my assistant coach for years at Rice. When he was at ASU, when we played UCLA and Arizona and Oregon and Washington, these guys had, pros at the point guard position. Derek was at his best. And when we played somebody he didn't really respect, he didn't respect them. And I used to get so mad at him, to be locked in every game. And I coached him 4 years of high school too, by the way. That's another crazy, crazy story. I coached a kid for 8 years, but he was like that in high school. And I knew in the big games he would always show up. And I remember the day Herb Sendek said to me, hey, Coach, do you think Derek can play point guard at Arizona State? And I thought about it for a night. I said, let me sleep on it, because I wasn't sure. But then I remembered, you know what? He was always best in the biggest games. And at Arizona State, he's going to have those almost every night. And he ended up being 1,000 point scorer and 500 assists.
Yeah. My hope for Kentucky is two things. One, get healthy. You got to get Lamont Butler back. You got to get Andrew Carr back to at least like 80% health.
Yes.
And then you got to pray Kirk Reese comes back, because then it changes who they are with the depth and everything. And the other thing I hope for, to Trevor's point, I just hope that they can pull a Miami of 2 years ago and an Alabama of last year, where the defense is awful, but they figure it out in the tournament to get enough stops, and their offense is going to carry them. That's the only thing I can hope for. So we're just going to ride that wave of emotion. Riding that wave of emotion.
What's that?
Do what?
Is Reese not a redshirt candidate? I thought he was a guy who was supposed to be out for the year.
They're working. If he's out for the year, I heard that they're working to see if he can be redshirted and come back next year. But let's move on to another kind of wave of emotion. We talked about Houston as one of the absolute best teams in the country here lately, and they still are. This doesn't change that. But, man, how about the Texas Tech Red Raiders going in to the Fertitta Center and pulling off of a win in overtime, 82-81. Chance McMillan drops 23. The Red Raiders go 12 of 30 from the three-point line against this Houston defense, which was not easy, 40% from the three-point line. And they get a massive win in a building we've talked about that's damn near impossible to get a win, Coach. This is huge for Texas Tech. We had them. They jumped back in the top 25 this last week in our ECB poll. They got all the way up to 18th. They are a real contender in the Big 12 now.
I don't think I'd ever think I'd say this, but Houston couldn't guard them. And Kelvin's press conference, did you hear what he said afterwards?
No,
I did not. I missed it.
First of all, just first class, as always, but all credit to Texas Tech. Basically just said the same thing. We couldn't stop them. They played better. They made shots. They made plays. And that McDaniel kid was amazing. But let's talk about that craziness. I mean, how that kid was ejected is like, I think I text you guys, the refs should be suspended. I mean,
the JT Toppin situation.
Beyond egregious.
It was bad. I went and watched it after Michael sent everything. It was bad. And like for Samson to look, Samson's one of the best people I've ever interviewed. Like, he's the most honest person that you'll ever get in a, maybe not, maybe Dusty May just passed him after what we heard. But like for him to like just admit through and through like that they couldn't guard them. I just want to make a point about that really quick. Sorry. But like, I mean, from the Texas Tech side of things, I know how bad things got, but like, to get 4 minutes out of JT Toppin because of that situation, even if you lose Grant, like but like you lose one of your best players and you still can win this game. Like, I've been like lower on Texas Tech all year. And this is a game that like I had just bumped them in the top 25, I believe. If not, it was going to be this week. So I guess obviously now. And so just to think that this is a team that I didn't think was deep enough. And that's exactly what got them the win, was the 10 points off the bench from Christian Anderson. There's a lot of things that went right.
And how about this? With the Houston loss, that's their first conference loss this year. We have obviously Iowa State's still in the game. They got a game this week we'll talk about, but it's in theory a 3-horse race at the moment. Houston, Arizona tied at 9-1, Texas Tech 8-2. With Houston being the exception to the rule here back in November, we all would have probably guessed they would have been in this. Did anybody foresee Arizona and Texas Tech vying this closely for a Big 12 title in February? What an incredible job. Arizona, the turnaround. Texas Tech kind of coming out of nowhere. We know preseason they had some expectations, but they're right there in the mix for a Big 12 regular season crown now.
Texas Tech had so many games where they were just so close, but just couldn't get over the hump. They'd play these games really competitive, really tight, and just couldn't find a win. And this one, without their best player, their coach gets ejected later, and as Coach mentioned, Trevor mentioned, that ejection was egregious. I can understand giving like a flagrant one in that situation, I guess. Like, maybe. I mean, it was unintentional, but like he did kick a guy in the nuts. And it's like, yeah, I understand the flagrant one, that stuff happens, but the ejection saying it was completely intentional, egregious, just completely egregious in my mind. But one point I wanted to make on this game is Texas Tech without Toppin and Federico fouled out in 21 minutes. So he's only play half the game. They went small, and that small ball lineup, they were able to space the floor, get a ton of threes. As Coach mentioned, it was really tough for Sampson's group to guard them. That's what Kevin Sampson said, at least. But also, one note I wanted to make, obviously, shout out like Kerwin Walton, 4-6 from 3. Christian Anderson off the bench, the freshman, really promising freshman. Didn't play his best game, but that kid is going to be a player down the line. Chance McMillan hit a couple really clutch shots, but a player I really like. And granted, he didn't have his best game, but the leading rebounder was Federico in 21 minutes. And this kid played twice as many minutes, but against Houston, listed 5'11". He's not 5'11". He's like 5'9". Elijah Hawkins is tied for the team's lead in rebounding. He controlled the game, 4-7 from 3. I love his game. So quick as a guard. And he was banging down there with some of the Houston bigs. That says a lot about that kid. I really, really love his game. He's a pit bull.
No, and like to your point, it's a pimple. It's the best thing you've ever seen. I love that. 6 rebounds, 4 assists, like you said, but even like for the 4 turnovers and 2 fouls, not to hurt them. Like that's an incredible performance. One thing I'll just say too, and Coach can definitely, I'm sure, back me up on this because I don't know, you coached against Grant a couple of times, at least a couple of years.
Yeah, too many.
And so like his teams, just people. It's the perfect example in how we see college basketball. I was just talking to a coach yesterday that said the same thing about people not giving him time in November, December, yada, yada, yada. Like Grant's one of the best at, maybe the team isn't playing like they're supposed to in November. Like most teams probably aren't, but he's one of the best at completely getting a team bought in and through and firing on all cylinders, even with the adversity. The adversity is what speaks to my point is Toppin goes out, Federico goes out. Like they got performances with 6 guys, and it's just a testament to him and how much how good he is from just getting a team from point A to point B from November to February.
Trevor, it's an unbelievable point because I used to be amazed at how he would get those guys to go to that school and play in the low 60s and high 50s at North Texas. I mean, they knew they were going there. You weren't getting yours. Like you're averaging 11, you're averaging 9, you're averaging whatever. You could go other places and score 17, 18, and he would get them to buy in. And they were so damn good and so well coached. He is just a terrific coach.
It's a testament to him too. Like
no question.
I got a chance to talk to Ross Hodge last year, who a lot of people know, and Coach can back me up on this too. Give me 2 good points to blush on. Thank you. Ross Hodge is a huge reason for that, and North Texas hasn't fallen off since Grant left. And like that's a huge reason to like be able to build a staff like that, leave and then leave that kind of impact.
No, except for leading to the crazy home losses yesterday. They took one.
That's right.
Well, speaking of crazy home losses, I want to stay in the Big 12 real quick. Iowa State drops their 2nd game in a row this week. Kansas State goes into Hilton Coliseum and blows out Iowa State 80-61, gentlemen. Not the fact that they lost twice this week, but the fact that they gave up 80 in both of these contests for a defense that's so stingy, and they lose in Hilton, which again, like the Fertitta Center, we said is almost impossible to go into that building and get a win. Kansas State, who has really struggled, has one of the highest NIL budgets this year, according to reports, and really have struggled. And they went in and blew out Iowa State 80-61. Coleman Hawkins, 17, 7, 3 assists, 1 block, 4 steals. They get 20 from the Michigan transfer, Doug McDaniel. This was a great win for Kansas State, who's 10-11 on the year now. What do we think about Iowa State? They dropped both this week, and including this one at home yesterday. They get blown out by a pretty bad Kansas State team.
I'm going to give you guys a statistic, and I'm going to bow out. This was the game early in the day that I just had to miss because of circumstance, stuff with the house I mentioned at the top of the pod. But follow me here. Don't lose me, okay? I'm going to read you a statistic that absolutely blew my mind about this win, and then I'm going to let you guys – I'm getting out of the way. Kansas State is the first team with a losing record in AP poll history. We're talking 75 years, whatever, give or take. First team in AP poll history with a losing record to win by 15 or more points on the road against a top 5 opponent.
That's crazy.
It is a literal first time in history win.
So crazy. That makes sense for this Kansas State team too. They're just so Jekyll Hyde. Like it adds up. It adds up.
Talk about Jekyll Hyde. That's the Jekyll Hyde team right there.
Yeah. In this game, Iowa State got up like early. Like it was fairly competitive early. Like in the first half at one point, I believe it was like 30-30, like something like that. Then Iowa State just could not throw a rock into the ocean for a while. Like the start of the second half, they just came out just completely dry. They could not make anything. And Kansas State just kind of started cooking. And I thought that was obviously the huge difference. Iowa State kind of picked it up late, hit some tough shots, but like for a good 8-minute stretch out of the second half, they couldn't score anything. And I thought that was kind of the big difference in this game. They couldn't battle back. And full credit Kansas State, when Iowa State was making their comeback, they would just find a way to punch back, whether it was getting a huge rebound, whether it was hitting a huge shot, whether it was Coleman Hawkins, Brennan Hawson, Doug McDaniel. One of those guys just found a way. And this was a weird loss for Iowa State. They couldn't, another thing, they just turned the ball over a ton, 18 turnovers. That's crazy. Those are weird
just
games.
one of those. It's like one of those inexplicable things. Like it's just crazy. And this just goes to what Josh led us into there, right? Kentucky losing at home, Iowa State losing at home, Houston losing at home. Listen to this list of other teams that lost at home: Arizona State, Villanova, Mississippi State, Mississippi, Colgate, who has been dominating the Patriot League for how many years? Marquette, Utah State. I mean, great teams in their own prospective leagues. All those teams losing at home. And I'm sure I missed 5 or 6 or 7.
No. And other one on Big 12, just real quick, Kansas goes to Baylor and gets beat 81-70. Real concerns for the Jayhawks. We've talked about it. Another game where they don't get past 70 points. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry.
They were up 21 and they lost by 11.
Yeah.
How? How is that possible?
And this is not a great Baylor team.
I don't know if he came back. Edgecombe got hurt in this game too.
Oh, that's right.
Edgecombe got hurt.
So just another baffling loss from Kansas after, like DeRosa said, being up 21 points. Coach, you mentioned it. UConn, who we all thought would go into Marquette, they've been struggling a little bit. Probably a prime spot to get beat in this one, and they pull out a win against Marquette on the road. DeRosa, this is your backyard. Talk us through this.
Yeah, this game was, UConn just kind of came out, just kind of punched them. Like, Solo Ball was incredible. That he was like, really, that's just kind of it. Solo Ball had one of those performances where the guy didn't miss. And he's just one of those guys that when he's on, he's on. You have to do whatever you can to get him off the line. You have to do whatever to annoy him. Marquette didn't have an answer. He was spectacular. And that was really, really all UConn needed. And UConn answered the bell defensively too. Marquette wasn't able to get easy looks. This was the best, at least in that first half, this was the best UConn's defense I feel has looked in a long time. But Solo Ball was just that dude.
Danny said that after the game. He said, basically, we messed a bunch of stuff up, whatever, and Solo Ball didn't miss, and that's why we won.
Peyton says on Kansas, there's no pulse with this KU team, and I agree. They're just not good offensively, which is weird. They struggled last year, not good this year. Last one I want to touch on, and full disclosure, be on the lookout for a video tonight. I am recording with our friends over at NKY Bracketology. We are dropping our first of the year bracketology special, full bracket reveal. It'll be up on YouTube. We'll let you know. I want to bring this point up. I say that to bring this up. Gonzaga loses to St. Mary's. We predicted it, Michael, on Thursday. We thought this was a bad spot for Gonzaga on the road. They seem to always struggle out there playing St. Mary's. They lose by 4. And how bad is – not bad, but how much of a struggle has Gonzaga been this year? NKY sent me the full seed list right now. Gonzaga is a 10 seed. They are the last team in the first 4 byes, meaning another loss or another team's below them performance, they go into the first 4 out. Gonzaga is seriously flirting with missing the NCAA tournament.
And they have a tough schedule.
They have 3 losses in the WCC
and
on February 1st.
Tough schedule coming up. They have 4 tough games.
Is there a world where Gonzaga let me ask this. What is the percentage you would put of Gonzaga breaking their streak and missing the NCAA tournament?
Here's the only reason I would say a number above 50%. And again, gonna quote myself, right? Not a bracketologist. Don't ask me. But above 50% only because they don't have a Kentucky win in the middle of February randomly that not all teams get to save their life. That literally saved their life last year. So I would go 60%. They lose 3
I mean,
of those
they
games,
still have that win at San Diego State, and then they have the win opening day against Baylor where they just completely punched Baylor in the mouth. I don't remember if that game was on a neutral or like a home game, but like I think those wins will be enough as long as they just hold serve. I just don't see the committee keeping Gonzaga out. Like if they go to a Washington State, it's pretty good this year and win. I think they get St. Mary's again, and then they get Santa Clara, and they also have 2 against San Francisco.
I mean, they get St. Mary's at the Kennel, so like they win that game. That's probably the Kentucky game this year. Let's be honest for a second, but they lose 2 of those 4, 3 of those 5, which is possible. We all know it's possible.
Very possible. Very possible.
I'm gonna go with 60% just to answer.
I still think they make the tournament. I would say like 20% chance at best they miss it. They're still a tournament team to me. I'd be surprised, frankly, if they don't win a game in the tournament. It's just based on past success, really more so than this current group. It's just like it's going to be hard to pick against Gonzaga, like it's hard to pick against Patrick Mahomes. You know, not to the same scale, but like similar vibes.
You're allowed, and like people think about this in like such a weird lens, but like you're allowed to have past success. I don't know if I want to call it cloud your judgment on a team, but like, okay, I don't know. It's like we thought Houston was going to suck for a little bit there in the middle of late November, early December, and we're all wrong. And we were all wrong. We said that, and that's fine. And you're allowed to go, well, yeah, I think I trust the infrastructure of what it is. And if there's there's not many people better than Mark Few. And so, I mean, I said that last year. I was like, if they win the Kentucky game, there's not many better than Mark Few. They'll get through the rest of it. And that's exactly what they did. And so, I mean, I just think that this team seems way more susceptible to the losses than they ever have felt. And they don't have the one, I guess, again, I mentioned I pointed to St. Mary's. They just don't have the one that could completely save them. And I just think if it starts to spiral, it goes bad.
Yeah, I think 60% is good. And losing 2 of the next 5 is not out of the realm possibility. It was 2 against San Francisco, another St. Mary's, Santa Clara, Washington State on the road. I think that for the first time in a while, they're in real danger of not making the NCAA tournament. What we want to do now, though, as always, we appreciate our new sponsors this year that came on board over at W Energy. W is a clean energy drink that is made to give you focus with no crash, jitters, or angst like other energy drinks. They have no maltodextrin fillers. Don't use artificial dyes. W contains vitamins, amino acids, a nootropic, and 150 milligrams caffeine. The product is made in the USA in an FDA-inspected facility that strictly adheres to GMP manufacturing guidelines. If you go visit their website, www.w.gg, place yourself an order at checkout, use promo code ECB10. You're going to get 10% off of your order. Save yourself some money. Get some clean energy for if you're streaming at work, if you're whatever you're doing on the go. Use W, really good product. Use the promo code ECB10 at checkout. You're going to save yourself 10% off of that order. We appreciate W. I think Coach had to step away for a second. Let's turn our attention to some of the games this upcoming week. And it's another big week. Broken record, right? Let's start on Monday. We just talked about these 2 teams coming off losses. Iowa State goes on the road in the return game to Kansas. We talked about a few weeks ago. They beat up on Kansas, got a win. Now they have to go to Fog Allen. Both these teams are struggling in a way. Not struggling. Iowa State's in a better spot than Kansas. I don't mean it like that. But if you look at the course of the Big 12 conference is what I mean. We talked about they're kind of on the outside looking in. Iowa State's got 3 losses. Kansas is in a mix of teams with 4 losses. And Houston, Arizona has only got 1 loss. So in order to keep pace, one of these teams is going to have to win, obviously. But who needs this more? Kansas at home, Iowa State coming off 2 in a row. Michael, I'll come to you first. Who needs this win more on Monday night?
For me, I think it's Kansas. Iowa State, I still think is a team that, like, I feel like down the line they're going to get it right. Even if they lose this game, I still just trust them. Like, just the way they battled Auburn earlier in the season, the way they've gotten some of these games, the way they've shown how good they are, I still trust them. Versus Kansas, I mean, that would be another bad loss. I think Kansas really needs this. Not another bad loss, but like another opportunity squandered. Like in their last 2 games, they've had like a 99 and 97% chance to win them at one point and found a way to lose. If this game, if you lose this one too, and especially in similar fashion, you could see it just coming down. It's hard just for the perspective of like a player. It's hard to go back, feel like you've gotten these 3 games and then lose them. That could do a lot to like your mental state. So yeah, I think Kansas could really use this one.
Coach, in the first game where Iowa State beat Kansas 74-57 back on January 15th, Kansas had one guy in double figures. Zeke Mayo gave them 17. They got 8 from Dwan Harris, 6 from Hunter Dickinson, 4 from KJ Adams. So you get the point where I'm going here. Kansas can't win this game if their big guys do not step up. If Hunter Dickinson and Dwan Harris, depending on what his health looks like, and KJ Adams, if they play and they don't give them production, Kansas is going to get blown out at home again. Like, they need Hunter Dickinson. We've been saying this for how long now, gentlemen? A month or so now? They need Hunter Dickinson to be Hunter Dickinson. I don't know what the hell's happened to him, Coach. They need him in particular to step up and dominate this game on Monday night.
This is a really interesting game from the psyche perspective. Yep. In other words, what happened at Iowa State the first time, you're thinking, okay, Kansas, right? Well, but Kansas has not played well, even at home recently. And Iowa State just got embarrassed at home by Kansas State. So, like, what team mentally has the edge here? I'm not really sure. And usually I can come up with that, right, on this show in terms of who I lean towards. Man, both teams. I think Kansas, if you're going to say who needs it more, I'm going to agree with Kansas needs it more. But I think Iowa State, you're going to get their best game. And if you do, then they're going to win.
Yeah. I think it's an incredible unanswerable question too, because like you said, like there's just no real lean on that. Yeah. And like I would go, like, I'm going to pop his comment back up here, Peyton's comment, but like, I just think teams have learned how to exploit Hunter Dickinson. I think it's that simple now. Like, I think it's to a point where Michael mentioned I don't remember what game it was. It might have been the Iowa State game though, but I popped it up for a second. Pull the other one back up there.
Okay.
I did it because he needs to get ready to cry, because I think Iowa State is ready. I think Iowa State's ready for the moment. They understand the big loss. I think that big loss may help them. I think it's a revenge factor at that point. Just revenge within yourself of like, okay, we can go into Fog and we can win because we're the better team. And like, I mentioned Hunter Dickinson. Like, teams have figured out how to scout him. He's been in college basketball long enough. And if there was ever an Iowa State team in recent memory, especially under Otts, that can exploit anybody offensively right now, it's this one, like we've talked about with that trio of guards. And so I can't believe, like, KenPom, as much as we love him, KenPom has Kansas winning by 3. I know it's at Fog, but even the recent success and loss of these two teams, I still think Iowa State's better, and I still can't fathom the fact that I just think this is a big spot, and I think they know they can win this game.
Well, not only has teams, over the course of time now figured out how to defend Hunter Dickinson, but I think his effort, like, you look at like years past, like, yeah, guys would box him out and keep him away and do all these things, pull him out on a pick and roll and defense, but his effort was always there. Like, he could have to switch out on a big guy as stretch 4 or whoever and defend him and then still go down and crash the glass. He's not doing that. I don't want to say that he's looking ahead to post-college to his professional days, but he doesn't look like a dude who's engaged like he once was. Like, he's a National Player of the Year candidate, and he's not played like that. I think it's from an effort standpoint. Peyton's other comment here I was going to bring up, they've got Kansas has 2 home losses already, West Virginia and Houston. When's the last time we have seen Kansas with 3 or more home losses?
I'm looking it up right now.
I have no clue. I don't remember
it up right this moment.
Yeah. It's as good as a home court as there's been.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last 25 years.
Yeah. And just on that first matchup, when they played Iowa State, I remember watching that game pretty closely. Hunter Dickinson had 6 points on 10 shots. What Iowa State did defensively is they really just, like, he was standing on the perimeter for the most part. They were just really physical with him. He didn't want to bang inside, and he was standing on the perimeter quite a bit. Only took 1 3, but they forced him into a lot of like these like face-up mid-range jumpers. You need good Hunter Dickinson in this game. Hunter Dickinson's one of those guys that just, like, when he's at his best, he's playing with the chip on his shoulder. You need that version of Hunter Dickinson, because if he gets punched in the mouth early, I think it could be another bad time.
Yeah, there's something just watching him, like effort, I think, or
something's missing.
Motivation. Yeah. Something's gone from him.
Something's missing.
Yeah, something's clearly missing. Well, Trevor tries to look this stat up. We'll change course here. Tuesday night, a couple of big games here. Marquette goes on the road to St. John's in a top 25 showdown. And honestly, for the top of the Big East, UConn did themselves a huge favor winning on the road at Marquette last night. But not only do themselves a favor, They absolutely helped out St. John's, who's leading the conference at 10-1. It gives them a game separation over Marquette and Creighton now. And DeRosa, again, in your backyard here, the Johnnies getting a big-time home environment here on Tuesday night against Marquette. They win this. By all accounts, they're up 2 games in the conference with less than a month to go. Do you think this could be the title tilt type of game for St. John's? And do you think Rick Pitino in some way relays that to his team? Like, hey, we get this. We've got firm control of the Big East and destinies in our own hands.
Absolutely. And just based on like from a matchup angle in this spot, I mean, Pitino obviously will have his guys motivated, have his guys ready, especially coming off of a really competitive game against Providence again, where like they'll be really locked in for this one. That could have been a look ahead spot that you're looking forward to Marquette coming to town to win the Big East title. Makes sense that there was a little bit of a letdown there, but just looking at it from like a matchup perspective, Marquette runs a lot of 3 guards. Like, I mean, they run 3 guards almost exclusively, really. Cam Jones, Stephen Mitchell, Chase Ross, or Trey Norman, or Zaid Lowry off the bench. Tulsa, those guys is 6'5", versus St. John's is a ton of 6'7", 6'6", 6'4". Davon Smith is only 6 feet, but he's like a big 6 feet. He plays bigger than that. That I think could be a tough matchup. That if Marquette really wants to win this game, you're going to need an awesome game from Cam Jones. And don't get me wrong, he's very capable of doing it. He's one of the best guards in the country. But I think they're going to need a special version of Cam Jones if they want to go into MSG and pull off a stunner coming off of a pretty poor performance for their standard.
Coach, I say that about the Marquette game from the St. John's perspective. Their next 4 will, one way or another, determine whether they win the Big East or not, because they got Marquette Tuesday night. Friday night, they're on the road to Connecticut. Wednesday, the 12th, they are on the road at Villanova. And then Sunday, the 16th, they are home against Creighton. They're playing the 4 other competitors vying for that Big East crown. If they go 3-1, I think they're going to win the Big East regular season. And it starts on Tuesday night with Marquette.
Just so we don't get too far away from it. I don't have the full answer, but I will tell you this. They have not lost at home 3 times in a row since at least 1997.
Wow. Because Ken Palm doesn't go back that far. Yeah, it's crazy.
Bingo. I just opened what I had available to me. I don't have StatHead available right now, and so I can get that and I can tweet it later. But
well, we all believe it, and it's crazy. And back to so I'm done going against St. John's. They made me believe it.
They're your team for me. It was Mississippi State. They're your Mississippi State.
Yep, they made me a believer. I'm picking St. John's to beat Marquette at home because it's at home. Even though yesterday was the home loss, whatever, all time,
right?
Home team's losing. I'm taking St. John's. I think they're going to win the game. I'm not. They made me a believer. They're just finding ways. This might be one of Pitino's magic and one of those years.
Second year, Rick Pitino out of school always makes huge strides. There was a stat that came out the other day, Trevor, about Rick Pitino in his second year at a school.
Yeah,
and the jump that they take is incredible.
Just from a record standpoint.
It's
stupid. Well, and to your point, actually, what I was going to say is like it's kind of insane that he's done this in recent memory, especially because it's normally not the same group of guys year to year, right? And so, like in the past, having a second year at a program, that's pretty normal to have this guy's second year, et cetera. Like I look, something for me clicked in the last month. Like I was one of the last people in the ECB voting poll to vote them in the top 25. Like I just kept being like, there's not something there. There's not something there. And just, I'm in for the ride. I think this is one of Pitino's best chances to go out on top and win a national championship. And so I think that they're that good. And is this game to be, I was pulling that stat, so I'm a little behind here. Is that game at MSG?
It's an MSG.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, he's bringing the white suit out. They're beating Marquette. Are you kidding me? Like,
we've made this stat before. Somebody on the show has talked about it. Think about how close they are to being 22-0. They've lost 3 games by a combined 5 points.
Wow.
1 to Baylor, 3 to Georgia, 1 to Creighton. 5 points separates them from being 22-0. That's how good St. John's has been. Yeah. So they've got a chance to win a Big East title here in the next 4 games, and it starts Tuesday night. I think are we all going St. John's in this one, right? I think we're all okay. So the Johnnies, we'll see. That's an interesting one. They need that one to keep pace here. Tuesday night as well. I'd rather not bring them up, but
it's
a quote unquote big game. Top 25 matchup. Kentucky goes on the road at Ole Miss Tuesday night. Loss. Ole Miss wins. I'll just keep it like that.
I think the opposite. I think Kentucky figures themselves out. Like I think ultimately they just, as long as they shoot even remotely close to par for them, which by the way, excuse me, par for them is what, 38%? Like it's ridiculous. Like, if they shoot remotely close to their floor, Ole Miss is just too lethargic offensively. Like they're such a terrible offensive team to this point in the season that like I just thought that was going to be the thing that kind of took them over the edge. We knew they'd play tough. We knew they'd be a gritty defensive team, and they've lost these close games because of their just lack of ability to get a quality shot. I mean, I think back to the Padula shot against, I think it was Mississippi State, and he just like took an absolute errant 30-footer and just stuff like that. Like Kentucky will take advantage of that, and I think they'll win on the road.
I think Kentucky's going to win too. I think they're going to bounce back. I'm going with Trevor.
Wow. Yeah, that's three of us picking Kentucky on the road. Ole Miss gives up a lot of.
I'm not shocked it's 3-1. By the way, I'm not. I've no trust.
Ole Miss gives up a lot of 3-point attempts, and I just think Kentucky's a team that's going to knock them down. Ole Miss really wants to pack it in. They run some like pack line similar principles. I don't know if that works against Kentucky.
I will say this: every time this year I've picked against them, they've won. I picked them since Mississippi State and Tennessee.
We keep picking against them.
Now it's just at this point.
Hey, look. In all seriousness, if they lose this, they drop to 4-5 in conference play. That puts them down towards the bottom. They're going to have to play a Thursday night game in the SEC tournament. I keep talking about this for that league with how like getting the opportunity to play on Friday instead of Wednesday or Thursday is such a key in these tournaments. You don't want to have to make
February 2nd. Like it.
Do all the SEC teams make it?
Yes.
I had to look that up. I've heard
Big Ten
no.
They do not.
Yeah, I've heard no.
These bottom four do not make it.
Yeah, I've heard no, but I'll have to look into that. I've heard yes and I've heard no. So I'll look into that and see what they say. Tuesday night as well, Big Ten. We talked about Dusty. He mentioned Michigan State. They're coming off of their first conference loss last night. USC, Eric Musselman gets them. That makes the Big Ten race closer now. Michigan State sets at 9-1, Purdue 9-2, Michigan 8-2, and then you have a gap with some other teams at 7-4. So this is another big one for Michigan State. They are on the road back out on the West Coast on Tuesday night against UCLA. They stay in LA. UCLA, we've been up and down with them, hot and cold. They were off to a really good start, struggled in the Big Ten play here for the last month, but have started to string some wins together. Coach, I know you know Mick Cronin really well. This is a big environment for them, a big game to kind of pull themselves back into the top four of the Big Ten. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to save this as a teaser for my bank on it, so I will not make a pick.
I love it. Coach is a podcaster now. Let's go.
Hell yeah. Dropping that little teaser, baby.
I love it. Oh, dude, you got this. This is great. I love this. So you're just not even answering it. Okay, I'll just fill the gap. I'll just fill the gap then. Sorry, my bad. Bad podcaster here. No, I think Michigan State, Tom Izzo is one of the best in the country. It's just like, all right, guys, how do we learn from our mistakes? And he said it many times for many years that, and I know this UCLA team has some big wins. I don't think I'm afraid of them necessarily. If I'm Michigan State, I think that they know they can win the game. And I'll go with Sparty. I think it'll be good. I think it'll be close. And I think Trevor will be asleep at 10 p.m. So we'll see what happens on Wednesday morning.
I'm going to punch back, Trev. I like UCLA in this game a decent bit. Length, athleticism, I think they can force turnovers. And they're one of the teams that I think can kind of stop Michigan State, what Michigan State wants to do, which is a lot of getting to the rim. UCLA is so long. Some of those wings are just huge. And they get Tyler Bilodeau back healthy. I think he'll make some plays offensively. And I just think defensively they can really smother Michigan State.
Will force them into foul trouble too. Like that's the thing. Like even with all the length, like those guys are susceptible to fouling. Michigan State's 5th in the country in free throws. So I just think if that comes down to that, I think they'll be fine. And ultimately too, like one thing about Cronin too, I think one of y'all said something about Cronin a second ago, is shout out to him for being willing to, even in this day and age, to be able to put his foot down and just say what he said about his guys. Don't think he stepped over the line by any means. Maybe I'm wrong, but and they're 5-0 since then. So kind of crazy when you call out guys and have accountability for guys. It's amazing what'll happen.
I'll say this. UCLA obviously is going to muck this game up. They want to play a low possession, defensive, grind it out type of game. Tom Izzo is one of those dudes that he's going to be unfazed by that style of basketball. And you look at the loss to USC last night, Jeremy Fears, Jaden Atkins only had 12 and 11 respectively. They got nothing from Trey Holloman. They got nothing. Cohen Carr gave them 9, but not kind of the impact he normally has. Jace Richardson, who's been phenomenal as a freshman this year, only gave them 8. Point being is Izzo will not be afraid of that grinded out style, but his team's also that secondary break he is so known for. If you're not prepared for it, we'll get dunks, layups, and trail threes. I think Michigan State gets back on form and beats UCLA fairly comfortable. I'll say they win by 8 or 9 points. I just think if they want to pick it up and can get those opportunities to run, they do it much better than UCLA, and I think that'll be the difference. Plus the backboard. Izzo's teams are historically great on the glass. On Wednesday night, we talked to Dusty May, another Big Ten clash here for the kind of top 4 seeding. Oregon comes to town to Ann Arbor to play Michigan, top 25 showdown, coach. Dusty's our guy now. Oregon really good, been up and down in Big Ten play, but still extremely talented team. Does Dusty's team get it done at home in a top 25 matchup?
First of all, knowing Dusty's probably still watching this. So
I hope so.
There's no chance I'm picking against him, especially for him coming on the show. Go Wolverines.
I like it.
Michael, go ahead. I'm gonna vomit in my mouth. Go ahead.
I've liked this Oregon team quite a bit this year,
Yeah,
but these last couple games, they've looked a little like they haven't looked like the same team that I really kind of fell in love with early in the year. Like, I mean, they dropped a complete goose egg against UCLA. Like they were bad, and they were just really bad in that game. I want to see how they look today against Nebraska before I'm like particularly confident in this game. But I got Michigan here. I just haven't seen enough lately to get back on that Oregon team that I love so much early on.
7:30. I don't know if they're standalone tonight, 7:30, because of all the women's going on, but they'll be standalone Big Ten game for sure at 7:30. Standalone top 25 game, I know for a fact, at least with one team being ranked. Yeah, I'm out for context for the listeners. We're about to do time here for a fourth quack from Michael. Every time they do something fun, because I picked against them early in the season, I get a quack from Michael, a tweet from Michael about the original one. And we're up to three quacks now. And so if they win this game, I'm getting a fourth one. We're about due for one anyway. Yeah, that being said, even though I'm vomiting in my mouth as I'm saying it, I think Dusty's team's better. I really do like them. Ohio State guy here. I get it. But like, they're really, really good. And I think Wolf and Golden, I think they could pick this team apart in the front court. And I think it'd be really, really fun to watch. So I'll take Michigan.
I'll say this. Being at home, obviously a huge factor, even though we talked about last night and over the weekend, a lot of home teams lose. I think that they'll hold business. What's it called now? It used to be the Chrysler Center. What's their home venue called now? Whatever it is. Yeah, it used to be the Chrysler Arena, Chrysler Center. That's what I'll call it.
It was Chrysler Arena.
Yeah.
It's still the Chrysler Center.
Okay, cool. The Chrysler. Oh, yeah, I see it right there. The Chrysler Center. I knew it used to be called
Chrysler
that. Michigan, that big-to-big pick and roll. I don't know how Oregon's going to try to stop that, to be completely honest. And even not, Roddy Gale has been good for the most part of the year. I know here lately he's kind of been off form a little bit, but that dude, talking about an Ohio State guy transferring in at his length on the wing, can really cause, I think, Oregon some problems. I'd like to see him knock down a couple shots early and get him going. But I expect a big Roddy Gale game in this one, and I think Michigan holds home court, wins pretty comfortably in the end. Last one I want to talk about on Wednesday night, Missouri at Tennessee. Tennessee playing shorthanded yesterday against Florida. They did not have Zakai Ziegler. They beat up the Gators, just completely smothered them. A huge, impressive win for Tennessee without their heart and soul. But they also get a Missouri team who's been so impressive this year, bouncing back from a winless SEC slate last year. They're in the top 4 of the league right now. They're 17-4 overall, 6-2 in the league. They come off wins against Mississippi at home last weekend. And then they went on the road to Mississippi State yesterday in a tough environment and blew the doors off of the Bulldogs 88-61. I really like Dennis Gates' team. Tony Perkins coming in from Iowa, Tamar Bates in the second year from Indiana there, Mark Mitchell coming in from Duke. Caleb Grill has been playing really good here lately. He gave them 20 last night off the bench. I like Missouri. Their pace is going to be similar to what Tennessee has faced the last 2 games. Kentucky, Florida, they had mixed results. If Zakai Ziegler does not play in this game, Missouri puts at least 75 up on them, which is a lot for Tennessee's defense. I think Missouri goes in and gets a big time win. This team, I think it's legit. That ceiling could be Sweet 16 for this team if everything falls right. I really like this Missouri team.
Another team I wasn't totally bought in on that I am now. So I'm just gonna take them. I'm going to take them in this game just because they've been playing so well. and I'll kill two birds here. They're one of my shout outs for that 27-point win at Mississippi State.
Mine too. We had the same shout out.
All right, keep it going.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly take Tennessee here. I just think Missouri, I mean, they've been great. Don't get me wrong, but I just feel like this is a Tennessee spot.
Ditto. Let's move.
Yep.
Well, we'll move on to, unless there's something else. I didn't realize we didn't talk Duke UNC before we moved on. Real quick, your thoughts on that?
We can move on. It was the first time, honestly, I said this to someone this morning. It was the first time in my 26 years, so let's just say 20-ish watching the game, that it was the first time ever that it never felt competitive. Ever.
Yeah. Michael and I talked about it Thursday that this is probably the least anticipated game that I've ever recalled between these two, because Duke was so much better and they showed it right away. They showed it right away. UNC, as for what Peyton said about Kansas lifeless, what's beyond lifeless? Carolina's dead. They're buried. They're over with, guys. Like, this is bad. They're not a good team, and Duke can obviously win a national title. That was not a competitive game yesterday.
I did peek at Carolina's schedule, though. There could be some wins there if they do get a pulse at all.
There's a reason. There's a reason they're still on the bubble in most people's brackets.
Yes.
I agree, Coach.
Don't lose them, obviously.
Probably a little harsh, but unless they go find some 7'2" dude that's walking campus, they have no front court, and that's going to be guard reliant, and those guards are inconsistent as hell. I cannot trust North Carolina.
Been on the campus this year in the last couple, for a couple of games, and I promise you that guy's not on campus. I can assure you, not there.
Maybe Belichick's got some football guys they can bring over, at least give some toughness or something, like an offensive lineman that's agile or something. Who knows?
Caleb Wilson cannot come help them this year. I have confirmed that.
Yeah. Well, who knows in today's NIL? Maybe he can. I don't know. Let's start wrapping things up here. Let's go to bank on it. And I'm going to Coach first. He teased it. Coach, I got to hear this bank on it.
Not only do the Bruins win, they win by double digits over Michigan State.
I like it.
Wow. West Coast swing takes some air out of the Izzos.
Ooh, I like it. Going 0 for 2 in LA.
Hold on. I would like to say that my last bank on it lost by 36, but go ahead.
Yeah, my bank on it was Jackson Robinson dropping 25 in a win yesterday for Kentucky. So I was pretty bad yesterday too.
I don't remember what mine was.
I will go. Vanderbilt gets a huge road win at Florida. Bank on it.
Whoa.
Woo.
Yeah, I usually go very straight to the book. Like, this team's going to win by this much. I'm going to go a little different. Oklahoma State comes to Houston. Oklahoma State doesn't put up, they don't even get to the 50s. Houston wins by 30.
I didn't know where you were going with that. I got nervous. I was like, wait, whoa.
Yeah, you had me a little concerned there, sir. I'm going. We just talked about it. I really like this Missouri team, especially if Zakai Zeeler does not play. Missouri hits 15 threes on the road against Mississippi State yesterday. They're not going to hit that many. They're going to hit 10 plus. They're going to beat Tennessee by 6 or more on the road on Wednesday night. Bank on it. Shout outs going back to Missouri, Coach. We can share this one. Yep. Shout out Missouri for clobbering Mississippi State on the road. Like, that's such an impressive turnaround for Dennis Gates. I'll keep talking about this team because they play a fun brand of basketball. They're really talented, and they're in the mix, and that's all you can ask for if you're Missouri. New Mexico, my Mountain West favorites, pre-conference played who win the Mountain West Conference. They go to Utah State in a big-time clash at the top of that league and roll Utah State 82-60.
Did you see Richard Pitino's tweet before the game?
He did. He said, I'm sitting here at Starbucks waiting on when at Rick Pitino sends a thing to the Utah State fans to not be so mean to me or whatever, not boo me or whatever. That was funny. New Mexico, man, Richard Pitino's got this team rolling, losing JT Toppin, losing Jamal Mashburn Jr. Theoretically should have taken a step down. They have leveled up, it looks like. This team is the real deal and has a firm grip to win that Mountain West Conference. That's a fun team to watch. My last one, we'll go to our good friend over at Lenny, our head coach Lenny Acuff over at Lipscomb. I always mispronounce his name. Jacob Ognachevs. I forgot how to spell it. Ognacevic, one of their better players.
Works.
Jacob O is what we'll call. Yeah. He had 32 points, 4 or 5 from 3, 10 of 14 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 1 assist, and their 87-80 win over Bellarmine. Lipscomb's tied for second, the A-Sun at 7-3. they lost the production from last year. They're back in the mix. That's a team, and if you look at them, they're top 100 in Ken Palm. That's a really good team that, again, should make the NCAA tournament, and depending on matchups, could give a higher seed a scare in that first round. That's a really good team.
I gave my Missouri one, so I only have one. And I'm going to go to the crazy endings of the year category and shout out to the Boston College Eagles on that win against Florida State.
Yes.
Holy shit.
It was nuts.
Was that crazy?
Wasn't it technically? I think someone said it was 5 points in 4 seconds or something like that.
I think technically
that's the number, right?
Same thing with the inbounds against Kansas Houston. So similar.
Yeah, it was.
Steal
same
inbounds.
spot,
Same spot. Won the game
from the 3, same spot.
Crazy.
Which is insanity. I was just gonna make a comment real quick for Michael shout out, and I'll go last. Is the Patino thing, like Richard? That is that they make some noise in the tournament. Like we all thought. Like I picked them against Clemson last year, and I was like, oh, this team's going on the way. Like we all did. I remember we all sat here and we were like, that's the team, and then Clemson almost makes the Final Four. Shout out them. But that's a guy going to get plenty of phone calls if they win a game in March. Plenty of phone calls. I'll just say that.
Oh, Indiana, oh, Indiana, oh, Indiana, we're all for you.
Michael, go ahead. I have only 2. So
I got 2. One, I'm going to shout out an ex-New Mexico player. Jamal Mashburn Jr. had 32 points in an overtime win. Mashburn Jr.'s he's in contention to be the leading scorer in the country this year. He's he's a couple points behind Eric Dixon, so it's going to take a Herculean effort. But he's second leading scorer in the country. Shout out there. And I'm going to go to the other game. I was watching this game yesterday. Hampton Howard. Wayne Bristol Jr. banks in a 3 and 1-3 for the win. That was half of his points on the game in overtime. Really good game. George Beal came off the bench for Hampton, 28 points, dog. And again, Blake Harper, 35 points. Lefty, driver, getting to the rim, drawing fouls, doing everything. 20 of 22 from the free throw line. Blake Harper, this kid's a stud. He's a stud. Awesome.
Coach,
I text my guy Mike Carr right after the game.
Thank you. Yes, I haven't talked to him today, but I know he's happy. He
said, Coach, we did win, but we blew a 13-point lead in one of the ugliest endings of the game.
Sounds like Coach Carr. Sounds like Coach Carr. That's for sure.
Coach, I'll say this real quick. You're the only one I think that of this group that's old enough to remember the old school fan clubs where people would actually like have fan clubs for like a certain person, celebrity, and you would do week or monthly like letters, and you'd get like these little push pins and shirts and all. Michael is the official fan club leader of Blake Howard.
Blake Harper.
Blake Harper.
As he should be, by the way. He's one of the nastiest players in the country, and he's a freaking freshman.
We need to get Michael like a Blake Harper push pin.
They still do fan clubs, by the way. So I'll just transition to my shout outs with that. Is UNCW does a Donovan Newby fan club. I actually have a card. I'll post the tweet. It's really funny. So I have a few. You guys are not going to be surprised about what conference I picked because you all took a bunch of really good games. I was actually the Howard Hampton thing is a perfect response there. Look, I'd be far-fetched to think if I don't mention the team that I literally cover that I live in the same town as. They've won. Camels have won 5 games in a row. You ready for this? 4 of which by 23 or more points.
Wow.
They are on pace to do something that the CAA has never seen before. So I have to give them a huge shout out. They are winning games. They have 4 games in a row at home right here. They have Elon. They have some revenge coming up there, and then they have a Monday night against A&T on CBS Sports Network. John Fanta will be in the house. Super excited for that one. And then my second one, I have to give a shout out to Towson because they are doing something they've never done before in the CAA ever. They're 9-1. Coach Scary just got his 250th win. I think it was 250th officially at Towson. An incredible guy, an incredible character in this sport, somebody I've always appreciated. And then I'll give one more just for fun that I thought of just now. Is talking about coaches, and Coach will appreciate this if he's ever met him. But Coach Richie McKay, he recently just passed the whoever Liberty. He has the Liberty all-time win record now. I believe it was 264, now 265. I sent him an email the other night, just congratulating him. Somebody I'd talked to before, one of the first coaches I'd interviewed. Phil and I did it. It's on this channel. People can go check it out. One of the best human beings just ever. Loved the guy to death. And he emailed me back. Mind you, the CUSA plays at 8 p.m. and 6 p.m. They had a CBS Sports Network game at Kennesaw State. He emails me at 7:25 before an 8 o'clock tip against Kennesaw State. And I'm talking not just
why. We are looking for something to do. Believe me, 45 minutes before the game. I'm going to do a podcast on that some night.
You're totally right, though, because I try to get to games early and talk to coaches when they're not hermit crabs. With that first, when they're 90 minutes out, they're willing to walk around, talk, whatever.
Yeah.
And they go into the locker room, and I just don't know what happened. So I would love to talk to you about that on a podcast. What you do
I got to
for
get
those
I got
30
Little
minutes.
Mermaid to see, fellas. I got to get going.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yep.
shout out to him. He's an incredible human being, and he didn't just send a
He
thank
is.
you; he sent a full response. So I appreciate him to death.
With all that, we hope you enjoyed episode 214. We appreciate Dusty May hopping on. We appreciate everybody. I will be on the lookout tonight on the YouTube channel. We will have our official bracketology reveal with NKY Bracketology. Wrapping up for all of us here. We appreciate everybody. Leave the like, follow, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And until Thursday, we will catch you guys down the road. Peace.